In the very heart of the forest, there often reigns a tranquility that deceptively envelops us in an illusion of harmony. However, if we had the chance to listen more closely, we would notice the absence of many sounds that once created the unique symphony of living nature. In recent decades, the losses among insects have become so extensive that scientists have begun to seriously consider the possible consequences. Nature, which once teemed with life and energy, is beginning to lose its music. Experienced researchers and naturalists are increasingly speaking about a phenomenon they call the silent forest. This phenomenon is characterized by a noticeable decline in the number of insects, from small butterflies and bees to larger beetles and cicadas. What is alarming is not only the number, but also the diversity of species that are disappearing or becoming rare. Invisible to most of us, insects play a key role in maintaining the balance of the ecosystem. Visually, the forest may appear unchanged, but in reality, its inhabitants are desperately in need of help. Many of these tiny creatures are pollinators, which are essential for plant reproduction and maintaining biodiversity. Without them, food chains are disrupted, which can ultimately lead to irreversible consequences for the entire ecosystem. The disappearance of insects is not just a problem, it's a global catastrophe that many prefer to ignore. With each passing year, the situation becomes increasingly threatening. In the next part, we will try to find out why the forest is silent and what hidden threats are oppressing its inhabitants, dooming them to extinction. Hidden beneath a veil of silence, the true mystery of the forest is troubling scientists around the world. Why have insects, these little musicians of the forest, suddenly fallen silent? Researchers note that the main reason may be the destruction of their natural habitat. Large-scale deforestation deprives insects of their usual habitats, where they can find food and reproduce. Dense thickets and the twists of trees, which once served as shelter, are disappearing at an alarming rate. In addition, the use of pesticides and other chemicals in agriculture has a devastating effect on insect populations. These substances can enter the soil and water sources, becoming deadly for many insect species. Studies show that they not only reduce the number of insects, but also decrease their reproductive capacity, which further threatens their survival. Climate change also plays its part. Rising temperatures and changing weather conditions affect the life cycles of insects, disrupting their usual migration routes and breeding cycles. Climate change and unstable weather conditions can suddenly wipe out entire populations, leaving the forest even more silent. Scientists continue their efforts to understand how the combination of these factors leads to the irreversible disappearance of insects. In their attempt to solve this mystery, they use advanced methods such as DNA analysis and biodiversity monitoring to detect alarming changes in insect populations. The next step is to determine how human activities affect this process and what hidden threats continue to oppress the already vulnerable inhabitants of the forest. Along with the quiet disappearance of insects, their unique ability to bring the forest to life with their music is also fading away. Cicadas, which once filled the air with melodic trills, are now becoming increasingly rare. Beetles and grasshoppers, who created distinctive rhythms, are each day becoming part of history. However, the loss of these sounds is not just the disappearance of the forest's aesthetic component. This is a worrying sign that the natural order is being disrupted. With each species that disappears, the sound symphony that insects have created over thousands of years is being destroyed. The rustle of butterfly wings, the barely audible hum of dragonflies in flight, all of this shaped an atmosphere in which plants and animals could coexist in harmony. The disappearance of the forest musicians leads to serious consequences for the ecosystem. Without insects that pollinate flowers, many plants also disappear, along with those who feed on them. In many regions where pesticides and pollution have become the norm, the sounds of insects are increasingly heard only as memories. In some places, even at the height of summer, when the forest is usually filled with a multitude of sounds, there is now silence. This silence prompts scientists to search for causes and solutions to prevent further loss of biodiversity. Researchers around the world are striving to understand how we can help restore the lost symphony. They are developing strategies to prevent the destruction of insects and their habitats and to return the music to the forest. In the next part, we will look at how human activity has become the main destroyer of this fragile world, threatening the very existence of the forest musicians. For many decades, human activity has had a significant impact on the natural habitats of insects, changing them beyond recognition. One of the most destructive factors is industrial agriculture. The use of pesticides and herbicides, which are intended to control pests, often has side effects, harming beneficial insects as well. These chemicals can destroy bees, butterflies, and other pollinators that play a vital role in ecosystems. In addition, the reckless use of such substances leads to soil and water pollution, creating a toxic environment for all living beings. Deforestation and urbanization also contribute to the catastrophic decline in insect populations. The constant expansion of cities and agricultural lands leads to the destruction of natural habitats, turning dense forests and meadows into concrete jungles. As a result, insects lose the ability to find food, shelter, and suitable places to reproduce. Forests that once teemed with life are now becoming quiet and lifeless. The transportation system is another factor that has a detrimental impact. The constant expansion of roads and development of infrastructure lead to the fragmentation of insect habitats. Heavy traffic is also associated with air pollution, which alters the region's microclimate and negatively affects the life cycles of insects. Climate change caused by global warming also contributes to this tragedy. Rising temperatures and extreme weather events such as droughts and floods destabilize the usual living conditions for insects. All these factors together pose a serious threat to the existence of many species. Understanding how our actions lead to this tragedy is the first step toward correcting the situation. We must look for ways to reduce our impact on nature in order to preserve biodiversity for future generations. Ahead, we will examine even more devastating consequences of this loss as we explore how the disappearance of insects affects all levels of the ecosystem. Fields and gardens, once filled with the familiar hum of insects, become empty and lifeless. Where bees and butterflies once easily flitted from flower to flower, silence now reigns. Without pollinators like bees, most plants will be unable to bear fruit or reproduce. Studies show that more than 70% of the world's crops depend on insect pollination. This means that without these tiny allies, our agriculture would be on the brink of disaster. Fruits, vegetables, and nuts, all of these could disappear from our tables if pollinator populations continue to decline. Even such modest crops as coffee and chocolate are heavily dependent on pollination. The impact of insect disappearance on humanity's food resources could be catastrophic. Economic losses caused by declining crop yields are estimated at billions of dollars per year, and this figure is rapidly increasing. Beyond agriculture, the very structure of ecosystems is beginning to change. Without insects, which act as builders in nature, many plants will lose their foothold, which in turn will affect the animal world. Birds, reptiles, and many other animals depend on insects either directly or indirectly. Birds will be unable to find food, and many species of fish will lose their primary food source. A world without insects could turn into a desert. The plant cover, which usually retains moisture and prevents soil erosion, disappears along with the insects. This in turn threatens the global climate as it reduces the ability of forests and fields to absorb carbon dioxide. Such a situation calls for immediate action. We need to consider practices that can stabilize insect populations and bring them back into the ecosystem. The next part will discuss the grim predictions of scientists and what awaits humanity if the disappearance of insects continues. The disappearance of insects triggers a chain reaction disrupting the balance of the entire ecosystem. These tiny creatures play a key role in food chains, serving as an important part of the diet for many animals, from birds to mammals. When insects disappear, those who feed on them also suffer from a lack of food, leading to a decline in their numbers and ultimately to the extinction of species. The problems caused by the disappearance of insects are not limited to the animal world alone. Without insect pollinators, plants lose their ability to reproduce. This leads to a reduction in biodiversity and affects all plant life, altering the entire biological structure of forests, meadows, and other ecosystems. Such changes can lead to serious ecological consequences, including soil erosion and the loss of fertile land. Moreover, the loss of insects even affects aquatic ecosystems. The larvae of many insects, such as caddisflies and mayflies, serve as food for fish and other aquatic creatures. Without them, aquatic food chains are disrupted, which can lead to a decline in fish populations, affecting fisheries and local economic resources. Another equally important function of insects is the decomposition of organic material. They help process dead plants and animals, returning nutrients to the soil. Without them, the decomposition process slows down, which can lead to the accumulation of organic remains, disrupting natural biological cycles. Such a chain reaction highlights the importance of insects in sustaining life on the planet. Their disappearance is not just the loss of individual species, but a transformation of the entire ecosystem on which all forms of life, including humanity, depend. In the next section, we will look at what research data reveals about the scale of this problem and how scientists are striving to uncover its true extent. The numbers reflecting the disappearance of insects are truly shocking. In just the last 30 years, the population of these creatures has decreased by about 40%. Scientists trying to understand the causes suggest that if current trends continue, by the end of the 21st century we risk losing up to 2/3 of all insect species. This threatens not only the diversity of nature, but the entire ecosystem. However, this is just the tip of the iceberg. An important part of the problem is that many insect species are disappearing before they are even discovered by science. The time it takes to describe new species can't keep up with the rate at which they are disappearing. This is especially evident in tropical regions where biodiversity is greatest. Here, data show that the number of extinct species may be several times higher than in northern latitudes. Among those disappearing are bees and butterflies, which perform the critical function of pollination. The loss of these insects threatens multi-million-dollar losses in agriculture. Experts warn that even a slight decline in pollinator populations can lead to a significant decrease in crop yields. Studies show that such losses can reach several billion dollars annually and will continue to grow if no action is taken. But even more alarming are the data on the impact of insect extinction on other animal species. As a result of declining insect populations, many birds and small mammals are already struggling to survive. Ornithological studies indicate a significant decrease in the number of insect-eating birds. Such losses, extending beyond just insects, highlight the scale of the environmental catastrophe unfolding before our eyes. These figures serve as a stark reminder of the fragility of our ecosystem and the urgent need for action. However, not all is lost. In the next section, we will discuss the latest scientific discoveries that may restore hope and help change the situation if we act quickly and decisively. Laboratories around the world have become epicenters of research aimed at uncovering the mysteries behind the disappearance of insects. Scientists are using advanced technologies to understand exactly what is happening to these tiny creatures. One of the most significant methods is DNA analysis, which makes it possible to identify genetic changes occurring within populations. This helps scientists determine which species are most at risk and how they are responding to changes in their environment. In addition, new methods for monitoring biodiversity are being developed using autonomous sensors and drones. These devices can collect data on the state of insect populations in various regions, providing accurate information that was previously unavailable. Such technologies make it possible to map insect decline and track trends in real time. Another important area of research is the impact of chemicals on insects. Scientists are conducting experiments to assess the toxicity of pesticides and herbicides in order to understand how they affect the viability of insects. It has turned out that many substances damage the nervous system of insects, reducing their ability to reproduce and survive. Understanding these mechanisms will help create chemicals that are safer for insects. Alternative methods for increasing insect populations are also being studied. For example, breeding insects in controlled environments may become an effective way to restore their populations. Scientists are developing technologies for raising pollinators, such as bees, in artificial conditions and then releasing them into the wild. The results of these studies give hope that we can change the situation and restore nature and its balance. However, to achieve this, it is necessary to join efforts on a global scale and make significant changes in our approach to agriculture and environmental protection. Research is ongoing and new discoveries promise to shed light on ways to save insects, which are so vital for the health of our planet. With the disappearance of insects, humanity faces a grim future full of threats and change. Food chains that ensure the survival of many animals, including humans, are subject to serious destabilization. Birds and fish that depend on insects as a food source are now facing food shortages, threatening their populations. The lack of pollinators, such as bees and butterflies, is already putting food production at risk. Without these key species, agriculture could suffer losses amounting to billions of dollars. This in turn will lead to food shortages and a significant increase in the prices of staple products. The problem will affect not only farmers and consumers, but will also become a global challenge for the economy. In addition to this, the loss of insects also threatens ecological sustainability. Biodiversity, which ecosystems rely on, is under constant threat. Land that has lost its insect builders becomes prone to erosion, which reduces fertile soil and worsens climatic conditions. Climate change is exacerbated by the disappearance of insects, since biodiversity plays an important role in regulating the carbon cycle. Once insects disappear, the plants they pollinate will also cease to exist. This will lead to a reduction in green vegetation that absorbs carbon dioxide, thereby intensifying the negative effects on the climate. Without insects, the natural decomposition of organic materials is also disrupted. Forests and fields deprived of these natural cleaners stop functioning properly, which can lead to the accumulation of organic debris and the deterioration of soil quality. It is the responsibility of scientists and policymakers to take urgent action to save insects and prevent the threat of a complete ecosystem collapse. Understanding and action are needed now more than ever to deal with this invisible but critically important catastrophe that threatens our very existence. Despite the grim forecasts, hope still remains, and scientists are already developing strategies to prevent the final disappearance of insects. One of the most important steps is restoring their habitats. The creation of nature reserves and the restoration of forests can provide safe havens where insects can reproduce and increase their populations. Such places can serve as buffers, protecting them from the negative effects of pesticides and climate change. Reducing the use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides is also an important task. In recent years, there has been a growing discussion about transitioning to more environmentally friendly farming methods, such as organic agriculture. This not only helps preserve biodiversity, but also improves the quality of food products. Scientists are urging farmers and agribusiness companies to reconsider their practices and adopt technologies that are safer for the environment. Monitoring insect populations using drones and sensors allows for more accurate tracking of changes and adapting protective measures. This helps to respond instantly to threats and prevent declines in species numbers. Programs for breeding insects in controlled environments are also gaining popularity. Lab-grown pollinators can be released into the wild to strengthen natural populations and revive the symphony of the forest. We can contribute to saving insects by planting native plant species that attract pollinators. This will help create small oases for insects even in urban environments. Education and raising public awareness about the importance of insects also play a key role in changing attitudes toward them. Only through joint efforts can we restore harmony to the ecosystem and preserve this vital part of life on Earth.